Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a very awesome update for you from one of my favorite little micro brands out there, Nodus. As you can see, I brought two other watches along, and it's really to be a little bit more comparative because we did do a review or preview of their initial release of the Contrail, and this is an update to the line, the Contrail SS, essentially having the stainless steel bezel. And these things will look absolutely fantastic. And as I wore this Contrail, if you guys are a fan or follow me on Instagram, you guys will know that this thing found its way onto my wrist quite a bit. And really, it just reminded me very much of two other watches. And the two other watches that it reminded me of are actually excellent watches that I love. And if you look through my channel and just YouTube in general, you'll see that these are hugely popular watches. One of them is my Glycine Airman 18, which is a little 39 millimeter with a stainless steel bezel as well, except it has a little bit more of a traditional GMT layout there with the extra hand versus the 12-hour slide bezel of the Nodus. But as you can see, it's also a lot less cluttered. So that's really nice, and it's definitely a little bit more simplistic as far as the use. Sure, you're going to be tracking less time zones, but at the end of the day, it's extremely useful and invites you to use it a little bit more than I would say with a regular four-hand GMT layout. And then you have, of course, the Blue Alpinist, which was a limited release that was a huge smash this year. And the Blue Alpinist is just that quintessential overbuilt, ultra capable watch, and it's just ultra versatile, especially with the blue dial configuration and that blue dial. It kind of, it does remind me a bit of that Nodus dial, except I think the Nodus dial is even nicer. It's this infinity blue where it's just endlessly deep when you look at it, especially in transitioning light, which we'll definitely take a look at later on in the episode. So a little bit about the Nodus brand. They were founded back in 2016 out of Long Beach, which is basically in LA County, and it's Latin. The word Nodus is Latin for node, which is basically the intersection of two paths, and their whole mantra is really where quality meets affordability, heritage meets modernity, and design meets functionality. So it's, they're really all about having your cake and eating it too, and just pretty much being a real great balance of the best of both worlds. Now, this particular type of watch I consider an everyday watch, although it is 200 meters water resistant. So for an everyday style, you're going to kind of want that balanced combination of sporty and dressy, and I think this watch definitely can be dressed up and dressed down, which is great. So with all that said, that intro ran a little bit long. Let's go ahead and zoom out and get these guys in hand. Okay, so as you can see, this thing is absolutely gorgeous. Look at that dial. Even under the harsh studio lights there, you can still see the high contrast in that sunray dial. And those are my favorite type of sunray dials, where the contrast is just so stark between the high highlights of blue and then the low, almost black low lights. So really gorgeous, and I love that. I feel like when it's something that's just, more in your face, that kind of, and comparatively to the Glycine, you can see this isn't a sunburst, this is really just a gradient dial, but similar color layout and then similar size with the 39, except you're going to get, I would say, much more user-friendly lugs here, especially since this has a bracelet, which this model doesn't come with. This one technically doesn't come with a bracelet either, but of course the classic SAR bracelet will fit in any aftermarket bracelets. But honestly, that from the aftermarket, I really haven't found a bracelet that really sings to me the way that this strap does from B&R Bands. It's kind of this gray tactical strap, which I really am loving. But comparatively, as you can see, similar blues, except I would say of course, it's going to be more on the glossy side, but the brights are brighter, and I'd say even the lows are lower. So it's just a higher contrast. So it really does remind me of that. And then, of course, the fact that they're both 200 meters water resistant and really don't need to be is really wonderful. And honestly, as cool as this, this internal compass slide bezel is, it's it's something that you kind of have to find a reason to use, versus here with the 12-hour bezel, which is bi-directional and fantastic. I love the action on this thing. As you can hear, just so dialed in. And it functions the way it's supposed to. They didn't just pop a diver's bezel on here that was unidirectional. So really gorgeous, and infinitely useful. Of course, you go into a place where it's going to be a couple hours ahead or behind. You just dial it in, and there you are. So now you're going to be ahead 3 hours. So it's just that simple and just infinitely usable. And in this execution, of course, it just makes it a joy to use. And you can see that really high polished chamfer at the end above the grip knurling, and that thing is a light show. Look at that. And of course, this is just a prototype model. The final release is going to be a little bit different, slightly revised clasp, and you might notice some mismatched links there. You can see that's a brushed link on the side versus the polished sides here. So this one is actually a press model that's doing the rounds. But honestly, even before this thing got in hand, I told them, go ahead and sign me up for the non-bezel model, the 39 millimeter, which is essentially the same case, but it just has a smooth bezel on here with a slightly different shape as far as the taper goes, which I'm really looking forward to sharing with you guys for the channel. But while we're here with this one, the more I wear it, though, I'm not gonna lie, it's made me question my choice for whenever these are released. But this kind of watch, as an everyday watch, it just really has it all. And then just from, I'd say, a build perspective, one of the really great things is, of course, they do assemble and regulate these in the US. You get your 2-year warranty. And then the pricing is actually really good. They did raise slightly from the original pricing from that initial release, so you're definitely gonna have to click the links to go ahead and see what these are going to be currently going for. But I want to say it was in the 600 range, and I think that's an extreme value for what you get, especially in this layout, which, as much as I did enjoy that sapphire bezel insert, this steel one is just killer. That bevel and the transition there just adds another dimension that just really highlights the level of finishing that they're able to bring to you. So of course, basically around the bezel itself, it's about 40.5 millimeters, so 40.5 from the bezel, so that's why it's going to wear a little bit larger versus the 39, where the bezel is going to be sitting flush with the case at the 39 millimeter range. As far as height goes, it's going to be 13 millimeters thick, and then basically about 11.8 if you just count the case. So really nice proportions there, and of course this is 200 meters water resistant, so it does kind of make sense as far as thickness goes. And then you compare it to something like here. Again, of course, you're just going to have more contours and whatnot, but it's a very similar profile as far as the thickness and the scale. And then same, of course, you have a much thinner movement in here with the ETA 2893, but again, you can tell that these watches are a bit thicker, and the reason why is because they are water resistant, and that's just a part of it. I'll shout out to Erica's Originals Marine National strap, absolutely killer. Really feel like it was almost made for this watch. So Really lovely. And then of course it's, 20mm lugs. This thing is just dialed in. You can see these gorgeous polished bevels. H-link bracelet, very short links, and drape down the wrist really, really well. Fully milled clasp, and then you still have that beautiful chamfer that also comes down onto the clasp. So really tough to beat, especially in this price range for the level of just, they're doing things here with execution that a lot of brands aren't doing for, a well above $1,000. So really cool. It kind of reminds me a bit of, I guess, like Seiko Presage. I'm not saying that this watch is finished like a Seiko Presage, but the thing that separates a Seiko Presage from a Grand Seiko isn't the finishing, it's the fit. The finish itself is quite close, and there's even Presage watches that are actually Zaratsu polished. The difference is going to be the fit. So the fit and finish are two different things, and that's where I think they really excel here. It has more of a standard fit for what you'd expect in a micro brand under $1,000, but the finish is just next level. So the fit, what you'd expect, as far as gaps and tolerances and everything, but it's really that finishing, that fine level of finishing that they just really take it up a notch, and that's where this watch really excels, and that's where you really get your bang per buck there, in that the increased level of finishing is just absolutely fantastic. Of course, this is housing the Miyota 9015, which actually is quite a thin movement, by its own right. But because of kind of the layers there are to this case, it's definitely meant to feel like a tool watch. This isn't something where they set out to create some ultra thin, ultra svelte piece. This is just a super versatile, everyday sports watch, and it's not trying to be anything else apart from that, but it's just doing everything sporting, really to a level 10, which is really outstanding when it comes to how solid this thing feels, and then also how versatile it is. Being something you can take as a traveler out on a plane, or you can throw it on and it's gonna look good and kind of dressed up enough to be something you can wear on a nice boat or a yacht. And then of course you can actually take it into the water, into the depths, down to 200 meters, which is absolutely outstanding. The original models were really known for those really grainy textured finishes on the dials, and those are all gone now, from this this particular release. They really focused on another aesthetic, and I really love that sand. I actually have a black Contrail 39 with that kind of really sandy, grainy finish dial, and I love it. But this is really special as well, and I'm really looking forward to picking one up to own for myself, because I've gotten so much enjoyment from this piece on the wrist. So with that said, let's actually get this on the wrist. Okay, now as you can see, this thing just wears about perfect on the wrist and drapes so nicely, fits the wrist really well. Of course, up close, there's going to be a little bit of lens distortion. It's going to look a bit more oversized. But even up close like this, it doesn't feel super oversized. But when you get down here and you get a little bit more of my arm, into the picture for scale, it definitely feels right at home. And you can see even at that distance, you can see the light playing off the chamfers and the finishing really gorgeously. Even look at that clasp. It's like a mirrored polish, absolutely gorgeous. It's so nice to be able to look down and and have some of that visual play and enjoyment, even looking at the opposite side of your watch when you're just checking out the clasp. Really fun. And then of course you can see it drapes really quite nicely there. It has drilled lugs, so this thing's going to be a real strap monster. Of course, as you can see from kind of the contemporaries, these guys look great on straps as well, and essentially you kind of cut out having to have these kind of funky extra crowns, and you're getting some great functionality in a much more traditional sense, much more compact, and I think just design wise, just a more aesthetically pleasing sense as well. So this thing is just great. Man, look at that finishing. And I've hardly wiped this thing down, you know, for this video, and man, it just sings. Look at that brushing there, how uniform it is, and the light transitions and plays right off of it. Really nice. So let's go ahead and get into some low light transition. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, that bezel is just absolutely blinging from that 12 o'clock triangle there. Really beautifully done. And then from an indice standpoint, you can see there is a really great glow there. And they've even loomed the tip of the seconds hand, so you can actually make sure that the watch is still running. So if you do decide to take it under the water and you're doing some dive timing or something like that, you're still getting a pretty decent idea of what's what, which is really great. So of course, my hot studio lights do a great job of imitating direct sunlight, but one of the things I like to do is really get into some of these low light transition shots just to give you a better idea of what this watch is going to look like and you know, more realistic lighting situations apart from just direct sunlight, because you know, normally you'll be transitioning in and out of vehicles, you know, being in kind of under an overhang. You're not necessarily going to be in that direct sunlight. Also, these studio lights do a fantastic job of actually washing out a lot of the imperfections when you're looking at the steel and the finishing. And what we can do here in this low light transition is we can just look at the brushing, the uniformity, the way the light dances right off of those links really beautifully. And another thing, of course, when you have a dial like this that's transitional with light, you can really see again how high contrast that is. Look at those bright, vibrant blues, and basically everything around it is almost pitch black or a midnight blue at best. So you can see it just absolutely just lights up and glints, and it just gives you that, although the, you know, the design itself is really quite minimal, that dial material and that execution really adds so much visual play and interest to this piece. You know, I gotta say, I can't really get enough of it. This thing is just gorgeous to look at, and of course is a real joy on the wrist. So while the camera kind of readjusts lighting wise, we can get into kind of some closing thoughts. You know, of course, this is kind of a follow-up review. You know, for the full details, you can always check out my previous review. You know, or you could just follow the links to their website if you're interested. Of course, this is a 20 millimeter diameter bracelet, which does taper down nicely to about 18. So you're going to have a really nice proportion on the wrist, and just really comfortable. It's very balanced, you know, and the great thing is, of course, you have so many options. You have the 39 millimeter option, which is going to be basically the same thing, just with a smooth bezel installed, versus having the bidirectional 12-hour bezel. And you know, these watches are kind of loosely based on the Zen 556 and the Zen 104, and kind of in that they're those overbuilt traveler's watches, and those watches cost so much more. The crazy thing is, honestly, those watches at one point probably did cost, well, I don't know if they ever cost in the $600 range, but they were normally like an $850 watch. And you know what? They feel like that to a certain extent. That is kind of where they were really a lot of bang per buck. Now you're kind of paying the prices $1,200-$1,400. You're kind of paying what those watches are worth, and some of that worth is actually in the Zen name, versus here, really, I mean, the whole Nodus name, although it's a very cool brand, it's not holding any cachet. Really, you're getting your money's worth in the specs, in the finish, in the design, in the customer service. You know, there's these two young owners, and they're watch geeks. You know, they're hobbyists and enthusiasts, and they own this brand, and it's really something that's special to them. And the nice thing is they're keeping up with, you know, all the latest releases from other brands because they're fans. So it gives you so much, you know, for me at least, is so much pleasure to support brands like this, especially in this price point. You know, it's kind of the in style thing now is to come out with a little bit more higher end and ask and demand larger prices. So it's really refreshing to see brands that I think are still kind of in that acceptable micro brand sweet spot. And don't get me wrong, I spent tons of money on micro brand watches. For me, you know, under 1,000 is more than acceptable. It's pretty ideal when you're looking for a micro brand watch. But I'd say, you know, the general populace, they're normally going to default to more established brands at you know, at above $1,000. Although, of course, if you're a fan of the channel, you know that there's a lot of options now that are out there where you can still get plenty of bang per buck over that. But this is the thing that's great about this watch. I saw it, you know, I saw a couple of teasers. I saw, you know, this going around to a couple other reviewers. I really liked it. And it's just like, hey, sign me up for one. Because I don't have to really stop and save up too much and move around money to spend 600, you know, something bucks on a watch. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's still a good chunk of change, but it's not putting a strain, you know, as much as when it's like, okay, an $1,800 watch to a $2,500 watch where I'm really having to coordinate versus thinking, hey, maybe I'll be on the grind a little bit, or maybe I'll put it on the card and then just, you know, pay it off, you know, in 3 or 4 installments, you know, however it ends up wanting to kind of play out. The nice thing is it doesn't really affect and doesn't hurt, you know, what I'm doing as far as a hobbyist, and it's not cutting into any enjoyment. I can kind of just jump on, and that's one of the reasons why I was able to secure, you know, the Blue Alpinist as quick as I did, because they weren't asking an exorbitant amount for it. $600 flat, you know. And then when you compare that $600 to the 600 and some change you're gonna spend here, I mean, you're getting a better watch. You're getting a more, you know, like a human interaction as far as the production. And you're honestly getting something that is very close to someone, an actual human enthusiast, versus something where, you know, there's kind of the expectation of the types of watches you expect a brand to make once they're established. You don't really have those types of expectations here. They're kind of free to just create what they like, you know, and luckily for us, Nodus has really done a great job of conveying a certain design language that harkens back to the past without being too homage at all. I mean, this has an H-Link bracelet, but it doesn't look like, you know, a Zen H-Link at all. It looks more like a Seiko's H-Link, which I think is actually really cool. So with that said, you know, there's a couple different model variants that will be coming out soon. There's going to be this kind of Arctic white dial, and then of course the stainless steel 12-hour bezel, and then you're also going to have the smooth bezel options with the updated dials. And I think actually some of the other previous models are going to be released too. There's just always a lot going on. So, you know, with a smaller brand, you don't always have like a full press release to go off of, but, you know, these guys are awesome. I would follow them on Instagram if you guys haven't already, and really just kind of keep up with their releases and what they're doing, because it's actually really, really special. The bottom line, this is just another impressive release from a brand, you know, that's been really built by watch enthusiasts with the everyman in mind. And, you know, Average Bros Online Magazine definitely caters to the everyman. So, let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.